August 2014 to March 2015, we traveled to 22 different countries.
And we did it all for just $20,000 per person.
We went to Europe, the Middle East, Morocco, Australia, and New Zealand. So we're going to talk about the cost of everything. The transportation, where we stayed, food, souvenirs, and such.
$20,000 per person might not sound like a small amount of money, but as we know, traveling is expensive, and all the places that we went to, or most every place that we went to, was a first world expensive country in this trip. We have traveled previously, both Jessica and I had been to Europe before separately, and we've traveled together to Southeast Asia, to South America, and throughout the United States. This was our first extended long trip together abroad. So we had the idea to do this trip 2 years prior to actually doing it. During that time, Jessica was doing school. She had 2 years of her coursework left to do, and I was just working full-time in California. We saved up as much money as we could possibly save. We had roommates. Jessica didn't have any school debt to pay off because she was going to community college.
So before we left, I didn't have any debt, so I didn't have to worry about paying anything off. One of the reasons people don't do extended travel is because they have debt. I didn't have any car loans or student loans or anything I had to worry about paying off, so I didn't have to worry about that. I still have the same car as I do now, so it was paid off.
How long did you have that in high school, that car?
I had it since I was 21.
So you had it for 7 years. So we maximized keeping our debt payments down. I do have student loans that I have to pay.
But you can work online.
But I can also work online.
I couldn't.
We maximized our saving and keeping our debt payments while we were abroad down to a minimum. Then when our lease ran out at the end of her school, we pretty much sold everything we had. I sold my truck that I had and all our tools and furniture, and just pretty much liquidated what we had other than the bags we were going to take with us, and then flew to Iceland as the first stop.
We don't want to make it out that it's something easy that everyone can do. I mean, people have kids and debt and all that, so we didn't have any of that, so it made it possible for us.
Traveling is not something you can do on a whim. You definitely have to plan for it, and you have to design your life in a way to make it doable. You can't just be like, oh, tomorrow I want to go travel for 8 months, because all the things that you have in your life are going to weigh you down and keep you from going. That being said, you don't necessarily have to let your lease expire and get rid of your place. There are other ways to mitigate it by subleasing or by renting out property or whatnot. So why $20,000 per person? So
we should show a picture of our journey. Like draw a line of our journey.
Yeah, we'll put up a little world map of all the little places we went right here. So $20,000 per person. What did that buy us? So I've gone back and broken it down by looking at all our expenses and all the bookings and stuff that we did. A large portion of our budget was on flights. So we started in LA and flew out to Iceland. That was an expensive flight, and then as we flew, we progressively made our way east until we actually did circumnavigate the world and ended up coming back to California by still going east. So there was a fair amount of flying. We tried to minimize it as much as we can, but you can't really go from Dubai to New Zealand without flying. So that being said, in total we spent just under $8,000 on flights between the two of us, so $4,000 per person. Also, when we were in Europe, to minimize the cost of getting around Europe, we got a global Eurorail pass per person. And we'll do another video breaking down how that worked. It was worthwhile, and that cost us just about $3,800 US, so right at about $1,900 per person. When we were riding the train around Europe, some of the times we stayed overnight on the train. That's not specifically covered by the Global Eurorail Pass. You have to pay a little bit more to get a full cabin accommodation when you're staying on a train. So for our overnight trips, that was extra in addition to the Global Pass, and for all those added together, it was about $500 combined. So it wasn't that much. Also, while we were abroad, we rented cars in a number of countries to get to the places that you can't really get to outside of cities, and all of our car rentals totaled up was about $2,000. And that includes the insurance, or excess as you people call it in non-American countries.
So to cut costs and save money, we stayed mostly in Airbnbs. I'm sure a lot of you know what Airbnb is.
Yeah, if you don't know what Airbnb is, real quick, it's a venue where locals can rent out spare rooms that they might have and allow travelers to come and stay in their spare rooms for a cheaper fee than it would be to stay in a hotel. Typically, Airbnbs tend to cost about the same price as hostels, more or less, but hostels are per person, and given that it was two of us traveling together, it was cheaper to do Airbnb which was basically about half the price as compared to a hostel.
And that cost us about $9,500
Together, so about half that per person.
for the whole.
Everywhere. There were a few places where we chose to stay in hotels. These were mostly if we're only going to be somewhere for a night and we didn't want to go through the trouble of meeting a host at an Airbnb place and just dropping in for a night, although we did do that a couple times, but sometimes it's just easier to get in and out of a hotel. Grand total, all our hotels together cost us just under $1,000 combined for the world trip, which is pretty reasonable.
All that added together was about $15,000 if we round.
And our budget for this trip was $40,000, so we couldn't go further than that for the trip. Of our $40,000 budget, $15,000 of that was for accommodations and transportation. The rest of it, which is about $25,000, went towards things like food, souvenirs.
We didn't get that many souvenirs, but
We kept it really, really light. Tours, there's places where you go where you can't not do a tour. As far as tours go, we tried to avoid doing tours. We like to do things at our own pace. We like to discover things how we like to discover them. But it's unavoidable. You will have to get tours, or it's just more economical to get tours in some places. So I'm sure there was thousands of dollars we spent on tours that we took.
And then for food, we ate at our Airbnb host's house as much as we could, but I mean everywhere we went we ate out at least once to try the food. Yeah, we used the kitchen a lot, so that really saves a lot of money if you don't eat out. But we weren't that stingy where we didn't eat out at all. We ate out, or every country we went to we ate out at least once.
Even if it was expensive, like in Norway, your food is crazy expensive. Everything in Norway is expensive, but we had to have one meal.
We ate one meal there. It was $50 and we shared it.
It's good though.
Yeah. Switzerland, we had an expensive meal.
Switzerland, you're also expensive. Another thing is if you do prepare all your food at the Airbnb host's house, you should double check to make sure that you can use the kitchen before you book it. And the other benefit about using a kitchen is you get to go explore the random local markets and grocery stores, which can always be an adventure trying to figure out what that actually says. Is that cheese or is that meat? I don't know. Exploring foreign grocery stores is a lot of fun. So at first blush, it seems like $25,000 for food and tours seems like a lot, but you got to remember that this is over the course of 8 months for 2 people. So it's really just like, it's just over $12,000 per person for 8 months of food and tours and souvenirs and access to things like museums where you have to pay to get in. So when you add it all up, our lodging and all the other things, our food, our tours, and all that stuff, basically our daily running cost minus the cost of transportation, because transportation is like kind of singular events costs. So our daily running costs was $70 per person per day. Now that seems like a lot. We spent a lot of time traveling through Europe, and at the time the euro was a bit stronger than the US dollar. We did have fancy meals every now and then, so some days we'd go way over the $70 per person per day budget, but some days we'd go way under it. So we tried to even it out, but averaged out $70 per person per day, which seems, in hindsight when I'm saying it now, it seems like oh, we must have been traveling fancy, but it really wasn't, because that includes lodging, food, tours. In some countries we tried to go less than that. Certain countries it's easier to do that. But so we've already named a couple of things we did to keep our costs down. When we rented cars, we'd always rent the cheapest car we could get that would just do the job. We would tend to get insurance because that was just risky. I didn't want to drive in foreign countries without insurance. When we did our flights, we would schedule our stays at places so we could fly during the cheapest part of the week to fly in, which is generally Tuesday or Wednesday is the best time to fly for costs. We'd never fly anything other than coach, cheapest seats we could get. During the trip, we did have health insurance. That was one of the things like both of our parents were kind of insistent upon, and I guess that adds to the cost, but we would have been paying health insurance if we were just traveling around the United States too. So whenever there was an option to go expensive or go cheap, we generally took the cheap option. Like when we were in Venice, we didn't take any water taxis, we didn't take any gondolas, because that's a luxury. We can see people taking gondolas, and yeah, it might have been nice to do it, but it was just, there's no reason to spend that much money. Most all of our Airbnb rooms were on the lower priced Airbnb rooms because we're willing to put up with a little bit of dirt every now and then. Like location was the biggest thing we looked for, but we were willing to put up with a metro ride or a walk to get where we wanted to go. Also, when you book the cheaper Airbnbs, they'll tend to be a little bit further away from the center of the city, and it kind of feels like you're hanging out with the people, the locals, a little bit more genuinely when you're not in the center of the city and you're kind of on the periphery where the quote-unquote normal people are. That's part of what's great about Airbnb is you get to meet and hang out and just sit around a dining room table chatting with locals.
For souvenirs, we got postcards most of the time, or like we would take rocks or sand instead of buy something.
We have a little collection of sand that we took from like lots of beaches we went to.
And I think the most we spent on souvenirs was in Morocco and Italy.
We ended up having to ship them back.
Yeah, we couldn't carry them in our backpacks.
Which that was expensive. I think we sent something from Italy and that was like $100, and then we bought some stuff in Turkey and we sent that back, and that was also $100. But $100 here and $100 there, that eats your bank account real fast.
Morocco and Turkey were cheap souvenirs, or not cheap, but like less expensive. We didn't drink too much.
Yeah, that's a big one. A lot of people blow a large portion of their budget partying, going out to clubs and buying drinks, and I don't think we hardly drank at all, or
and
like
we had,
partied.
We had wine and stuff. And
every now and then we had a little bit of wine, especially in Italy. How can you not? But we
moderate amount of drinking.
And we didn't go to clubs.
Except in New Zealand.
New Zealand's a very expensive place for doing a lot of the extreme tourist things, so we didn't do much of that at all.
Yeah, we didn't do any of the
bungee jumping.
Yeah.
But there's places where you can jump off bridges if you saw our video, and just do poor man's extreme sports.
We just explored and looked at scenery most of the time, went on hikes.
Oh, one of the other things we did, which helps keep the budget down, is try to plan at least a month in advance where you're going to be. Because we found that if you wait 2 weeks or less to book a room for your next place, all the good cheap places tend to be gone, and you have to pay a higher rate for your rooms. So if you can book at least a month in advance, good and cheap rooms tend to be more readily available. The longer you wait, the more it costs. This is also true of flights. Another thing we did to try to keep the cost down was we traveled to places that are near each other. So from Iceland, we went to Norway next, and then from Norway, we went to Sweden next. We went to neighboring countries as often as we could. We didn't want to do many big jumps, because the bigger the jump, the higher the cost of transportation between that jump.
Yeah, like from Dubai to New Zealand was expensive.
Dubai to New Zealand that was our biggest jump, and that was very expensive. When we were in Europe, we really wanted to get to Greece because we were excited about Greece, but we knew it made sense to wait until our travels slowly brought us down that direction. So just patience can pay off.
So that's how we save money traveling extensively. Do you have any tips of how you save money traveling?
That's it.
That's it. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Please like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe and share.